This episode is presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Bryan Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center. Dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, it provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Hello and welcome to the Explore Local podcast presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head in partnership with Cedar City Iron County Economic Development, produced by Dallas Smith Media, and I'm your host, David Johnson. All right, today we have Ryan Starks, who is the President and Executive Director of EDCUtah, which stands for the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, David. Great to be here.
Yeah, so glad to have you on here. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
We have.
And I think to start off, for those who aren't familiar with EDCUtah, why don't you just give the high level of who is EDCUtah, what do you do, and what's your purpose?
Absolutely. So EDCUtah was formed 40 years ago next year. So next year we're going to celebrate in a big way all of the accomplishments of the organization. And it started with a group of business leaders who said, we've really got to put Utah on the map economically. And so a lot of private sector founders invested money into this organization. We're a 501c6. It's a public-private model. And the thought was, let's pull together private resources supported by the public and have a model that's adaptable and that can help drive economic development in all parts of the state. Right. So we are an economic development organization, a statewide organization with a focus on enhancing Utah's economy. And we track that through capital investment and also through the number of jobs created. And not just any job, but really focused on the right types of jobs. Right. So we're great partners to the state of Utah. As you know, I previously ran the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Yeah. And so EDCUtah is a complement. We're kind of the opposite side of the coin. And so hand in hand, it's a really powerful duo. And so been there for 8 months and having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that good high level explanation. One of the benefits, and maybe you can elaborate on this more. So in government, for example, I'll step back. In economic development, one of the hard things, and I've talked about this lots on this podcast, is we can't always talk about projects that are looking at the area. And the reason why is there may be a company who's a multi-million, billion-dollar company who's looking at a lot of sites, maybe in one state, maybe across the nation, and they don't want their name out there because they don't want like a community like Iron County or say Utah County getting excited thinking, oh, they're looking here, and then they end up going to Colorado or California, and then all of a sudden everybody's upset. So these companies are very cryptic most of the time. A lot of the times we don't even know the name of the companies because there's a lot of times a middleman. So I'm teeing that up, and the reason why is one of the benefits of EDCU is because in government we're beholden to transparency laws and things like that. And so companies, it's hard for the companies to have that discretion when they're just doing research about the areas. And so talk to me about the benefit of having kind of this privately led type economic development organization given that context.
Yeah, that's a great way of teeing it up. And so you're right. So if company A wants to look at the Utah market, we can be a neutral clearinghouse, providing research, data, information about different communities. And so that we're not pitting communities against each other. We sign NDAs typically that protect the information, the proprietary information for that company. And then we'll give that project a name. And so that's one of the fun parts of the job is coming up with names for these different companies. that's kind of the code word, so that we don't, disrupt that confidentiality. And then we can work with the state, and we work with counties and cities to help drive that project forward. We do get data, things like number of employees or what they're looking to invest in terms of capital.
Right.
We'll work with the company for things like workforce needs or water consumption or access to power, real estate availability. And so EDCUtah is an apolitical organization. And so there's no politics driving any of the decisions. It's just truly research, data, presenting the red carpet experience to that site selector or that company.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And I want to digress a little bit. You talked about the project names, and that's what we have to do. So a lot of times we don't know who the company is, and if we do, we're under NDA, and so we can't speak about who the company is. And so we give them these fun project names. And some people like to get super creative. I usually like to keep it simple, but have a little something that just I know indicates to me what the project is. But there have been times where I've named projects and I'm like, wait, which project was that again? I can't remember. So tell me, what are some of the funnest, if you can recall, what are some of the funnest project names that you recall, or what fun ones have you come up with yourself? Or?
Yeah, one was Project Mixer. It relates to a company that bakes goods and creates food, and so kind of you think of a big bowl or a big mix it up type thing.
They're not creating DJ equipment,
yeah,
but you never know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll have a Mixer 2.0. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's been a couple times where I've come up with these project names. One was, and I'll dive into this, a lot of economic development with these kind of high-level projects. They're usually more large-scale. A lot of times manufacturing, energy projects. Retail is a whole different ballgame in and of itself. And in Utah, retail plays an important role that in a lot of other states it doesn't play, because we have sales tax here.
Yeah.
So retail plays a driving factor that in other states it doesn't play the same kind of factor. But I remember one time when I was up north, I was working with Costco, and I named it, I think, Project Blue or something. And then people were like, well, that gives away. And I'm like, okay, I'll call it Project Red. And they're like, that's just as bad. And I'm like, I don't know. A color's pretty, benign. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to give away too much on that.
Yeah. So as a team, we'll kind of bounce ideas back and forth and make sure there's no blind spots.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Or giveaways in what you're naming it and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk EDCU a little bit more, and then I kind of want to dive into your career and then back into EDCU and kind of where things are going.
Okay.
So right now, talk to me about who is represented in this statewide organization.
Well, I like to say, there's this saying that we've all heard, that it takes a village to raise a child. And I would say it takes a state to raise a project. And so when we talk about economic development, there's no one single entity that's just going to go get it done. It requires so much collaboration. And so the old adage, economic development's a team sport. And so a project may come to Utah, or even an existing project within Utah may look to expand. And so there's going to be touch points from the local economic development team, typically from a city, a planning commission, a city council, a county, as we look at different tax structures, whether it's sales tax or even transit room tax for a hotel. There's a workforce component. There's a site selector component. There's the state, and the state's so good at just kind of sealing the deal through the incentive. But the project typically doesn't start and end with the incentive. That's just kind of what we celebrate, right?
Right.
But even after a project may announce, there's still the hand-holding, so to speak, of connecting that project with the right stakeholders, helping to navigate everything. And that's where EDCUtah comes into play, is we try to pull together these different resources in partnership with the governor's office so that that company has access to all of the resources and gets the help that it needs.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been the fun part of this job, is just seeing how it's not just the incentive, it's really everything A to Z. As a network, EDCUtah has about 200 investors. These are public and private investors. So you think of banks or architects, you think of engineers or attorneys or accountants, people who would service a project.
Yeah.
And so if we get a project, once the EdTIF or any type of incentive is announced, and let's just say Project Mixer says we're selecting Utah and we're selecting the Iron County area, well, then what? How do we help that company not just announce it and celebrate, but then be successful?
Right.
And so it's an ongoing relationship. We try to give them a soft landing. That company then can plug into our network so they feel like, hey, I'm here with other business leaders. I'm learning to navigate the state the best way that we can. That's the power of the private model and the public model working together.
Yeah, I love that. So with site selectors, your role really is to kind of, I don't know if gatekeeper is the right word, liaison. Your EDCUtah's role really is to be the liaison for site selectors and companies or potential projects. Talk about that dynamic with your staff and site selectors, and kind of how does that process work as things come in to your team to then disseminate out to the state and say, hey, we've got a potential project.
Yeah, it's a really robust process. And again, it's founded on relationships. And so we have a database of roughly 800 site selectors. These are people that we've cultivated relationships with over really the better part of 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we'll visit with these people at site selector conferences or have direct phone calls and just cultivate the relationship so they feel comfortable recommending Utah as a destination for a project. And so once we kind of cultivate that relationship, we can hopefully tap into some of the project flow that these site selectors represent.
Yeah.
And so once the site selector puts a project in front of us, we do some vetting to see, hey, is this project eligible for a state incentive?
Yeah.
And if it is, let's loop in the governor's office. And if it's not, let's loop in the right party. Maybe it's the locals. I think that's one thing about EDCUtah is we're pretty project agnostic. So whether there's an incentive or not, we can support that company if it kind of fits the goals and objectives of the local community. Once we get information about the project, we give it a name. We will typically host the site selector or project representative. Actually, before we do that, we get the project information, send it out to the different communities.
Right.
All communities in the state get that. So
for those who are listening or aren't familiar, that's what the jargon we call it is an RFI, or request for information. It kind of details the utilities, the water needs.
Exactly.
So a community can look and say, whoa, they're asking way too much water. We don't even want to apply for that. Or, hey, that looks perfect for us. You know?
Absolutely. And kind of one of the cool things I think where EDCUtah can influence is a lot of times a project will come forward and say, we want to be in Salt Lake. We want airport access, and we need X amount of power, X amount of water. And we may say, hey, that's a really good, we have some opportunities, but have you also thought about rural Utah, where we also have A, B, and C?
Right.
And they can say, oh, well, we'd never thought about that before.
Yeah.
And so we try to get all parts of the state represented, send out this request for information. The communities then can decide, this project fits who we are, or maybe it doesn't fit who we are.
Yeah.
And so then we can kind of narrow it down to a handful of sites, give those that information to the site selector, host the site selector, ideally do some site visits, meet with the local communities, provide the economic data, the incentive information. And then at that point, we can kind of whittle it down to one or two top sites. Now, if it were just Utah being considered, this job would be easy.
Right.
But it's a competitive market globally.
Right.
Certainly domestically, there are a lot of other states throwing cash up front, doing things to impress a project. And so our bread and butter is the relationships. It's the consistency. It's process really drives results. And so we like to, hang our hat on that. And we've been able to win a lot of projects, and, we miss sometimes, but it's not for lack of trying. So.
Yeah. And just for listeners' sake who aren't familiar, I mean, one of the things that Utah makes a priority is that our incentives, for the most part, are post-performance. Mm-hmm. And they are incentives generally on new revenue. Mm-hmm. So when a big project comes in, people go, well, why are we doing incentives? Well, we only do incentives on newly generated revenue. So if we have sagebrush there and it's only bringing in $1,000 a year in property taxes, and it's not EDCU that administers that, that's GOYO, the governor's office, or the Utah Inland Port Authority. But we do it for performance. So if that property is only bringing in $1,000 a year, and that's all it would bring in for the next 30 years, if a new project comes in and now through property taxes brings in, $100,000 a year, any incentives is only on the 100,000, not the 100,000, 1,000.
That's right.
And it's usually just a percentage, anywhere between 10 and 30%. Mm-hmm. And every year that manufacturer has to show that they're meeting their incentive obligations. So it never takes away from the current tax base. Mm-hmm. Yes, it may take from the potential, but it was either sagebrush for 30 years or 100 new jobs and kind of giving back. But the local community in the state still brings in, say the incentive was for 20%, mm-hmm. the local community in the state is still bringing in 80%, which, going from $1,000 now to $80,000 a year.
Exactly.
Still
Great
a significant difference. Anyways, I'm blabbing.
No, you're exactly right. And the cool thing is this past year and a half ago, Governor Cox, we recommended, hey, let's do something in the service space. Mm-hmm. And so he issued an executive order that said for every new job that's created because of EDTIF or this tax
increment financing.
Any type of incentive that's given to the company that leads to a new job, that company needs to do 20 hours of community service per employee.
Oh, wow.
So if, let's just say a manufacturing company came to Cedar City, they hired 25 new people, 25 times 20 hours of community service. That's a way to help make sure those companies are fitting the Utah way, getting involved with the community. So it's...
Well, what's great is I've had so many manufacturers that we've spoken with the last year or two, and especially this last year. And I would say the majority of them, there's some that all they want to know about is incentives. And usually that's a put off, because one of the things we look at is not just if they're, if we are a right fit for the company, but we look and see if the company's a right fit for us. Mm-hmm. And usually one of my indicators is when they start up front asking how they can contribute in the community. And that's usually a good green flag on a company looking in the area. One of the questions that I have for you is, who are some of our competitors to Utah? Who are those other states that are always giving us a run for our money? Mm-hmm. And what are some of the strategies behind showing what we got that they ain't got, kind of a way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so some states are just competitive from A to Z. Other states are competitive just in a certain niche area. Mm. So, for example, Boston is really strong in the life sciences. It's going to be hard for us to compete head-to-head with Boston. Yeah. But, we feel like we stack up pretty well with other states as it relates to the life sciences. Mm. Where we see a lot of, competition with energy, with data centers, with manufacturing is typically Arizona. Mm. I mean, they're being really aggressive right now. Yeah. Texas because of the tax structure,
Texas, yeah.
and just everything's bigger in Texas, right?
All my exes live in Texas.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Florida, North Carolina's really got its act together economic development wise. And so those are some of the competitors that we see across the board. Otherwise, it's more kind of niche markets depending on the nature of the project.
Yeah. And how does your team like to try to, I mean, I know what my team does and what some of my peers do, but is there things that you guys, are there some pretty standard things where you say, here's how we differentiate from Texas? Let's use Texas as an example.
Yeah.
How do we compete when they're so big and powerful, really?
Yeah. Well, there's a story years ago of a company that was in Utah that said, actually, this company was thinking about coming to Utah, and it came down to Utah and one other state. And ultimately, the company said, well, Utah's the better fit, the workforce, the culture, the work ethic, but this other state's giving us all this cash up front. And so they went with the other state. And after a year of receiving millions and millions of dollars of cash up front, the company said, this is not working. They had to give the cash back, and they came back to Utah, tail kind of tucked between the legs, and said, we get it. We should have come here from the get-go. And so we try to help distinguish Utah from other states by emphasizing workforce, collaboration. I mean, the executive branch and the legislative branch here in Utah get along really well. We have favorable tax policies. We have favorable regulatory environment. We have a can-do attitude. And I think the thing that really sets us apart is every project that comes, there's always a workforce development component.
Yes.
And people just sing our praises. Like, we don't know what it is about Utah, but the work ethic is there. The honesty's there. We know what we're getting.
Yeah.
And that's such a variable. It's so critical to a project being successful.
Yeah.
A lot of states can't offer that maybe consistent workforce piece.
Yeah.
And so we kind of build the whole puzzle piece by piece, from workforce, incentives, quality of life, close to LA, close to the California market, without maybe having some of the baggage that California has.
Yeah.
And so we just try to position ourselves within, the country as a preeminent place for economic development.
I love that you highlighted workforce, because it's almost an ironic strength point for us. And I don't know if ironic's the right word, but it's almost double-edged sword, because perception-wise, these site selectors, these companies, they look at Utah, especially like areas like Iron County, and they go, well, where's your workforce? Population-wise, because they are so used to both retail, manufacturing. They're so used to getting like this 5 to whatever, depending on the company, 20-mile radius, and saying, what's your population? And they look and they go, you ain't got it. You don't have the population density we need to get the workforce we need. And and that's where storytelling in our job and relationships plays such a key role, is helping these site selectors know and understand, so when they're working with companies, they can communicate. So for example, Iron County, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, is we are the rural hub for southern Utah. So we literally have workforce that drives a 90-minute radius, even from eastern Nevada, to work and shop here, which is why our Walmart is the number 1 grossing Walmart in the state and number 2 for visitation.
Amazing.
But to help communicate that, there was even a local grocer in Utah, Utah local grocer, that looked at the area and they're like, you guys are too small. And then a couple different developers got their third-party analysts, did an analysis, and showed that not only did Cedar City have enough room for 3 additional grocery stores, but we would be that grocery store's number 1 grossing store in the state.
Amazing.
And so telling this story, and I say that definitely in a bit of a braggy way, but what I mean, I think that translates to Utah as a whole. These other markets look at us, these site selectors that aren't familiar with kind of a rural-ish market by comparison, they don't understand that story. And sorry, I'm blabbing. So, for example, we had a couple different manufacturers. When they came here, They had 30 jobs open. They got 300 applications. And then I've spoken with them since, and they have said that in the few years that they've been here, their turnover is like a tenth of what it is in their other facilities across the country, and because of the work ethic. And anyways, I'm really blabbing, but I don't know what kind of thoughts maybe you have kind of along those lines of workforce.
No, you're right. It's the workforce, and it's the higher institutions, higher education institutions, but it's also the local communities, our high schools. There's just a mentality of we can do it here in Utah. One of my favorite, I think, highlights of my career was in the year 2024. We did the 24 rural county tour, visiting all 24 rural counties.
Yeah, and that was with Governor Cox, right?
It was with Governor.
Yeah.
Actually, this was just when I was his executive director. I came out with my team, and so the governor wasn't able to make it to all of them.
I see, yeah.
And so we visited 24 counties in the year 2024. And I think the common denominator for Utah's success is that workforce. We would visit with high school students and college students and local tech colleges or universities, and just understanding how everybody works together. And, you know, we have, this kind of has a negative connotation, but we have a chip on our shoulder, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
We want to punch above our weight. We want to prove that we can do it. And it's amazing time and time again. It's just a proven model. So,
well, one of the things I say is, and this sounds cliche, but it's very true, Utah has a bootstrap mentality because communities like Cedar City, Iron County, and that's why there's so many municipal power companies throughout the state, is because so many communities that have been historically rural had to provide everything for themselves: power, gas, water, sewer. And so it's a bootstrap, get it done, and collaborate, to get back to what you were talking about in the beginning.
That's right.
To make this happen. So we can't just sit on the wayside and wait for some company to say, hey, you're the perfect fit, right?
That's right. Very entrepreneurial. If there's a problem, we're going to solve it. So.
Yeah. I cannot believe how many startup companies come out of Utah, to the extent that Governor Cox and GOEO have really pushed for the last few years the Startup State Initiative, right? Or the last couple of years, I should say. Yeah,
it really stemmed from a visit that we took to Israel. Israel likes to call themselves the Startup State. We came back with a lot of ideas. I was on the trade mission with the governor. I was his economic development advisor at the time, and we said, why can't Utah do this? And about that time, ranking came out, and I forget the publication, but a credible publication came out and said, Utah is actually the best state to start a business based on all this criteria.
We usually have like the top 5 best cities for business. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah. And so many elements go into that. And so we said, well, we need to really connect with that budding entrepreneur. We need to pull together everything happening at the universities, and let's launch this initiative. It's called the Startup State Initiative, to help companies, gain that confidence that they can start a company and that they can have success. We even launched a website. It's a really robust website. It's still up and going. A lot of people are visiting it. It's called startup.utah.gov, and it just highlights all of the resources that an entrepreneur would need. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a couple directions that I want to go. One is to I kind of want to get to know your background a little bit more. And maybe we'll go into that now. And then I kind of want to pick your brain on some of the ebbs and flows that have happened over the last year or two with EDCU, with GOEO, and kind of just like address the 800-pound gorilla in the room sometimes, but really feels more like an 800-pound gorilla, but really is a lot of collaboration going on behind the scenes. And I'm alluding to, a question, and we'll get to this in a minute. I actually want to get to that more on the tail end, but I'm alluding to, one of the top questions I get from site selectors and from companies is, what's going on in Utah between EDCU and GOEO? And I'm already teeing this up, so maybe I'll dive into it and then we'll go back.
With it. Sure.
But there has been some shifts, and you were the executive director of GOEO for a little while, and there's been some shifts. Some shifts that were like, oh, that was on point. Other shifts where we're like, maybe that wasn't the best way to go, and let's try to go. Some shifts and changes that, are maybe indifferent. One of the shifts that I have loved, and I can say this because 8-10 years ago, GoYo and EDCUtah, I always felt like I was hitting my head against the wall to get any kind of attention. That's not to put down those that worked in those entities. It was just your classic, like, working with the state, here, talk to my lower level people, and maybe we'll give you an opportunity. And I'm not trying to speak ill of anyone. But the reason why I mention that is the last couple years, I've seen a juxtaposed dynamic in that I see people on the ground in my community, in smaller communities, in larger communities, from GoYo, from EDCU, saying, hey, how can we help you? The fact that you are sitting right here in this podcast chatting with me is a big indicator that we are here to truly work with the community. We're not here for the top-down approach. We're here to be in your communities, help you be successful, be honest with you if something's not going to work in your community. But I'm really blabbing. I'm teeing it up way more. But the real elephant in the room question is, what's going on with EDCU?
Yeah.
What's going on with GoYo? And how's that dynamic looking as we move forward? And what's specifically for you, what's EDCU's role going to be as we move forward?
It's a great question. Thanks for teeing it up. And I get really excited about this question. As you mentioned, I was with GoYo 6 years. We saw what worked and maybe what didn't work with EDCUtah. We have a long-standing, the state has a long-standing relationship with EDCUtah. And so what we decided was 2004, John Huntsman's elected. 2005, he stands up the Governor's Office of Economic Development, GoEd. For that entirety, from 2005 basically to 2021, 2022, EDCUtah had a contract to provide support to the state. And so many good things came from that. And so we like to celebrate that. 2022, the contract expired. And at the time, Governor Cox had said, we really need to pivot and not just be so Wasatch Front centric. We need boots on the ground. Let's pivot and focus on all parts of the state.
Yeah, buoying up the rural areas. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something, I grew up in rural Utah. So when he gave those marching orders, I was excited to help lead the charge. And so we implemented a rural outreach model where we got funding to hire 5 individuals to represent the different AOGs in the state.
And this is in GoYo, the governor's office at that time.
And so we hired somebody in 5 County and 6 County and Wasatch Front and MAG and, all parts of the state to kind of be those boots on the ground that you talked about. Yeah. And that was different than the previous EDCUtah model.
Right.
And so once the contract finished, its 5-year term, we said, well, rather than just re-up it, just to do the same thing that we've done for the past 20 years, let's actually take a pause and let's kind of put our heads together and say, what do we want the next 10 or 20 years to look like?
Yeah. What
are the needs today versus 20 years ago, and what are those needs going to be in 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And so there was a pause of a few years, 2.5 years, where it took time. It took a lot of, kind of intentionality to figure out what does that next decade look like.
Well, and can I interject here?
Please.
In some of those transitions, and I tell people this all the time with city and county stuff, is sometimes there's a shift or a change that needs to be made, and you start going in a direction and you start making shifts. And when you make that shift, a lot of times there's this growing pain period where you're like, that didn't work how exactly we thought. So we kind of have to shift again. And people go, well, why isn't it working? And why did you change it? Well, when you make a shift, you don't know all the things that are going to bubble up. Sometimes you don't know what was under the surface. And sometimes you go, maybe we should have kept that component, but only changed this component.
Yeah.
And you start working through those growing pains. So I'm kind of helping people understand that, there was in some of this transition, decisions you made, decisions others made, where it's like, oh, well, that wasn't working quite well.
Yeah.
And other things where you're like, that's exactly what we were trying to achieve.
That's right.
And now I feel like it's all kind of coming to piece together. So anyways, I'm sorry to interject, but
No,
keep going.
thanks for that's really helpful. And so what we ultimately decided was during this time of transition, of looking forward, start to get some stakeholder input, start to get some more direction from the governor, and think more broadly in terms of all of the state, and then how do we leverage the targeted industries, and then how do we kind of maybe put away the shotgun, which for 20 years the state would go recruit with kind of a shotgun approach. We were an up-and-coming state. Let's, somebody wants to come to Utah, let's go get them. With our growth challenges, with housing shortages and water and energy, we said, let's be more intentional. So how do we maybe put the shotgun away, pull out the rifle, or be more focused on, key sectors and key companies? And so during all that process, we knew it would take time. I had the opportunity to go over to EDCUtah. And the funny part was I showed up to work my first day when they hired me, and I was like, hey, I know you guys think that I'm the bad guy here.
Because you made all these changes,
That's
right? Yeah, contractually.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. And I said, so please don't kill me. But this is part of a bigger plan.
Yeah.
And that plan is to look forward. And so once GoEO hired Jefferson Moss, who's a friend, we said, great, now that we have you in place, I've previously worked in that role. Now I'm at EDCUtah. Let's continue that conversation. Let's bake a pie that's really going to service us for the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
So pleased to report that over the past several months, we've been working closely, doing a lot of mapping. What should the role of GoEO be? What should the role of EDCUtah be? We're signing a memorandum of understanding this week that details that partnership. And what it does is it positions us for success, and it clarifies how a community can engage or how a site selector or a company, and it's really the One Utah approach. And so now if you're a site selector, you don't have to ask, do I contact GoEO or do I contact EDCUtah? Because if you contact either of us, we're just going to say, great, welcome to Team Utah. We collectively are going to help you get to where you need to go.
Right.
Another exciting part that maybe I'll just give you a little teaser is the way we look at our RFI portal. EDCUtah has managed that in the past. There's some opportunities to collaborate. So there's maybe a unified RFI portal. Good for the communities, good for companies, good for site selectors. So more to come on that.
Yeah.
But basically this new model puts us all on the same team, linking arms. If there's a project that GoEO needs help with, they're going to lean on us. If there's a project that we need help with, or even if we don't need help with, that communication is flowing freely. And it's just that's the power of the model. That's maybe what was lacking just for a little bit. And so we renewed that focus to say, we really are tied at the hip. Let's go get it. And I just think moving forward, we've solved that kind of 800-pound gorilla that you talked about, and it's just forward from here. So
well, and and as you're moving forward, there's still going to be these little tweaks that you make along the way.
Absolutely.
You're going to navigate and understand, okay, how is this new process working? But the core of it too is EDCUtah, and that's why I mentioned this kind of a little toward the beginning, is EDCUtah still plays that role of if a company needs a little more discretion before they start reaching out, or they need someone as a liaison to navigate them of who should I be talking to, whether it's from GoEO or Department of Environmental Quality or water or power. EDCUtah can still play that discretionary role for these companies, and vice versa. If a company reaches out to GoEO and is like, hey, we have a project and we need to put it out, either way, they can say, okay, well, let's collaborate with EDCUtah to get that out. Right?
That's right. It's the 1 + 1 = 4 model. And so it's really cool that we have this built-in relationship now. Give a big shout out to Lance Sof and Lisa Lindberg, Jefferson Moss, and our team, Aaron Farr, and all of us have been working to get to this point. And now it's just rock and roll, baby. It's let's go time. So
yeah, I'm pumped. And one thing, and Lance, if you're listening to this, I hope you're okay with me just saying this. But one thing that I love that Lance has told me is he said, we can. There's a balance between rushing things and a balance of taking too much time. The more time you take, the more thoughtful you can be in putting it together. But also the more you keep people waiting and wondering. And he's like, so trying to find that balance, to get things out, trying to kind of roll things out a little bit here and there, and anytime you make a change, you'll always have your critics, you always have your advocates.
Yeah.
My philosophy is, going along with what you said about One Utah, my philosophy is I'm an advocate with my partners, and the state are our partners here in Iron County.
Yeah.
So I'm going to advocate and help you. And being an advocate means not only, saying, hey, let's give this a try, but also saying, hey, let's give this a try, but I'm going to let you know if, hey, this part's not working.
Yeah.
Let me know how I can help you make this more functional.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just kind of my approach.
It's a great approach, and it's the collaborative approach that Utah is really known for. And I think one of the strengths of EDCUtah is we may test something, but we have an investor base of 200 members, private members, public members who can give us some feedback on, hey, this is working or this is not.
Yeah.
So we can leverage the power of the private sector, complement the good work that the governor's office is doing. And quite frankly, they can do things that we just can't do. They have the state seal, and they have the mandate from the governor.
They validate things in a totally different way. Yeah.
And then EDCUtah conversely can do things that the state just can't quite do.
Yeah.
We can get in the weeds a little more. Something that we're real excited about is, during this transition period, we have seen kind of a splintering. Like GoEO will go to a trade show, EDCUtah will go to a trade show.
Divide and conquer, right?
GoEO will go to a site selector conference, EDCUtah will.
Right.
Well, what this new model will incorporate is a unified approach.
Oh, I see what you're saying is instead of working together to go to these different trade shows. Yeah. That's why you use the phrase splintering. It's almost siloed.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right.
And so now imagine if you're a site selector and you go to a conference and you see an EDCUtah booth and a GoEO booth, you're going to be like, wait a second, like, who am I talking to?
Yeah.
Now we're going to have a unified Utah booth.
Right.
And it's not about credit, it's about getting projects.
Yeah.
And so really excited about that.
Well, I love that too, because one of our developments here, we were chatting and I told them about the Site Selectors Guild and some of these different site selector groups, and he got all fired up and he's like, let's go to these. And so we signed up, and then we started telling EDCU, GoEO, and some others, hey, we're going to this. The next thing we knew, we had a contingency there. And this was, I can't remember, a year ago. And afterwards, all of us that went said, this is how we need to do it, because Utah had a presence there that no other state had.
Yeah.
And we had people from governor's office, from EDCU and Iron County and some other peers. We just had a good contingency. And I love that approach. And that's really why we talk about, and I'm bragging here, that's why we host the One Utah Summit in Iron County.
That's right.
At Southern Utah University. Because we know about collaboration. And one of the things that we've been trying to do, and we'll have them come on too, is the Southern Utah Economic Alliance. And when you were in GoEO, GoEO helped fund seed money to get that rolling, because one of my objectives when I got here was, we need to make Southern Utah not, when people talk about Southern Utah, they think, oh, I'll meet you in St. George.
Right.
And St. George is a powerhouse. But when we say Southern Utah, it's bigger than that.
It is.
And my goal was to make Southern Utah another major market, Western market in Utah. So we bookend the state with the Wasatch Front.
Right.
And my peers and I can't take all or any of the credit, really. My peers and I have worked together to create the Southern Utah Economic Alliance, or expand it, I should say. And GOIA was such a huge support. And we are going to have just this powerhouse of a bookend market to the Wasatch Front. Sometimes we'll have friendly competition with our neighbors up north, but really it's to say, we are one Utah. That's what I'm getting at, like what you're talking
Absolutely. And I was at GOEO, and I not trying to pat myself on the back, certainly. That was something, though, that when I received that proposal, I was all in, because you're right. We needed to market this part of the state as a destination, and glad to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the partnership between EDCUtah and GOEO, now factoring in some of the regional partnerships. I would say the inland port is super important. That's another layer that just complements what GOEO and EDCUtah are doing. And so the three of us are really working closely. But then we can lean on our associations too. 47G, manufacturers. We can lean on the World Trade Center Utah. There's a project that we're looking at that's international right now. Yeah. And rather than fracturing our approach, we're saying, let's all jump on a call and see what's the best approach. Who has the relationship? How can we attract that company to Utah? And so it's not just, lip service. It really is collaboration in the trenches. That's going to make all the difference.
Yeah. In fact, we just had a project, MCM Engineering. It's been here for several years, and they had a major expansion. And we connected with our friends with the World Trade Center, and GOEO and World Trade Center for Korea has this relationship.
Yeah.
They often refer to themselves also as GOEO Asia. And MCM Engineering, who's been here and was founded, but it was bought by LS Electric, this Korean company. And they were seriously contemplating on making their expansions in Texas. We're talking about Texas earlier. Right. But because of that relationship with our GOEO Asia friends and World Trade Center, their relationship where they live in South Korea was able to show them why Utah, staying in Utah and expanding and investing in Utah mattered. And we just had the chairman and CEO and then the president of LS Electric, this multi-billion-dollar company, powerhouse, international company, come and visit and talk about their expansion, and then bringing over the next 10 years 250 jobs to the area.
Yeah,
that's the power of this one mentality that you're talking about, and it doesn't have to be unique, honestly, to Iron County.
Yeah.
Honestly, all my peers across the state, if you even listen to this at all, or want to hear my droning voice, everybody can do this.
Everybody can.
It really is. And I'm glad you also brought up the Utah Inland Port Authority. Now, very elementary explanation of Utah Inland Port Authority is it functions like a project area, almost similar to a redevelopment agency. It's an entity that manages these project areas. Iron County was the very first rural subport to the one in Salt Lake County. And it was the catalyst of what's been going on in Iron County. And I would go as far as say the catalyst that expanded this Southern Utah Economic Alliance.
No
and
question.
The expansion.
It was the model, truly, for what could be done in rural Utah.
And now there's 13 others across the state that said, hey, we could use that. And if people don't think of like the Port of LA, that's not how it functions. It basically says, a community goes to the Inland Port Authority and says, hey, we want to have more, we want to be able to compete better with other areas. So you draw a line in your community and say to Utah Inland Port Authority, hey, we want a project area that incorporates these different properties in our industrial parks. And then it's approved by both the local community first and then by Utah Inland Port Authority. And it says, okay, you can now use this incentive tool that the state manages. And it does those post-performance incentives like I described earlier. But the reason why I'm digressing on that is today, or at the What's Up Down South, you, Jefferson Moss, and Ben Hart were on a panel. And I looked at that panel and I said, this is a trifecta. This is a three-legged stool that matters. Because the three of you and the organizations that you're doing, they all complement each other
They
to
do.
make it successful. And Iron County, Southern Utah has just been this poster child of how to make that collaboration work and function.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm really blabbing. Thoughts?
No, you're right. It's, it sounds cliche again, but when we work together, we can get so much done. And going back to the credit piece, I think I've heard it said that, the nonprofit space or this kind of 501c6 public-private partnership space can be hard in Utah because everybody's trying to cannibalize each other to get new members or whatever. Our approach at EDCUtah is the complete opposite. So if World Trade Center Utah has a win that leads to an economic development, win for the state, that's a win for us.
Yeah.
And so we celebrate each other's accomplishments. It's not a competition. People just keep wanting to come up with this like, oh, it's a competition between these groups. It's actually not.
Yeah, we're talking all the time.
That's right. It's very complimentary. And so knowing that you may talk with GoEO or the Inland Port or World Trade Center Utah, we know you're going to call us when we can be helpful, or vice versa. Like when we pick up the phone and say, hey, David, we have this opportunity. Let's loop in Inland Port or whoever it might be.
Exactly.
That's kind of the ingredients, or that's kind of the secret sauce, I think, for success.
Yeah.
And we just had to get back to that. So.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to completely shift gears.
Yeah.
I totally went into the 800-pound gorilla when I was alluding that I'd get to it later, but there's two other things I kind of want to dive into. One is, tell me more about you. Tell me more about how you got into economic development. You've highlighted working for GoEO, but you've been more boots on the ground like I am.
Absolutely.
So talk about your career, just kind of give high level some of the things you've done throughout your career that's led you to where you are right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm from the Ogden Valley area, so up in Huntsville, Eden. Worked up at the golf course at Wolf Creek.
Oh, all right.
Mowing the greens and the tees, and it was a perfect teenager job. Hope to retire in that same job one day.
There you go.
Went to Weber State University, served a church mission in Ecuador, came back really not understanding the opportunities ahead of me or not knowing what I wanted to be. I decided to get involved with student government at Weber State and ran and served as student body president for a year. And to me, that was very eye-opening because I served on the board of trustees with the president of the university was Ann Milner, who now serves in the state senate. And understanding the dynamics of public service really spoke to me. It lit a fire within me. And so I started to network and understand what are those public service opportunities. And I met Jason Perry, who was the executive director of GoEd at the time under John Huntsman, who was governor. Met with Jason. He offered me an internship. I got to work in GoEd for about a year, 9 months as an intern, doing business development, targeted industry research. They then hired me on full time. And so I was there for 3 years at GoEd, thinking economic development speaks to me. I love building communities. I love connecting dots, empowering people to really elevate the quality of life.
Yeah.
I also recognized, if I want to be where I want to ultimately go professionally, I need to get some more education. I had always had a desire to get a master's degree. So I left, I went to BYU, did a master's degree in public administration. But when the professors gave me the option to do research on different topics, it always came back to economic development.
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
When I graduated, I had the chance to work for the governor's office of planning and budget and understand the financial side of a state budget. And I was assigned to 5 state agencies as their budget liaison. One of the agencies, of course, was GoEd. And so now I understood kind of the operational and the financial aspect of how to make an agency run well. Following that experience, I was able to get hired on in Wasatch County. It was, again, kind of a public-private model with Wasatch County, Midway City, and Heber City contributing to this board, and also the Chamber of Commerce. And so we had, at one point, 400 members. Oh, wow. And we had the cities and the county all in a unified way say, we want to increase our economic opportunities. So we were able to land some big projects, get involved with the MIDA project that's taking place at Deer Valley, kind of cut my teeth really in economic development for 8 years. Love that chapter of my career. And then never really thought I'd go back to GoEd. Val Hell, who was the previous executive director, called me in 2019. He said, hey, I'd like you to come work with me and be a managing director, kind of a vice president. And so took that job 2019 and worked in the governor's office of economic opportunity till I guess it was 2025, until May of 25. So roughly 6 years, understanding the different dynamics of community development, international relations, of state tax incentives, being present in the communities. And so it just speaks to me. And then when I had the opportunity to lead the Economic Development Corporation, it was just a perfect blend of the state and the local coming together.
Yeah.
And I'm having the time of my life. So
I feel like there's a song about that.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, well, that's awesome. And I love that because it allows people to kind of see, get to know you a little bit more and why you do what you do, right? That's the why. There's another aspect of you, and I was teasing you a little bit before we started the podcast. There's another trifecta, and I call it the Starks brother trifecta. Tell me about, it's the opportunity to give your brothers some shout outs too. Tell me about that trifecta. And I think business and economic development just runs in your guys' blood.
Well, it's something. I come from a great family. I have wonderful parents. They taught us to work hard and to be grateful.
Yeah.
That was kind of the secret. We didn't have a lot, but always were working hard, always being grateful.
Now, you may have other siblings besides the two that I'm referring to. So how many siblings how many kids are in your immediate family that you grew up in?
Well, I have 4 brothers.
Okay.
2 older, 2 younger, and I'm right in the middle.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up with these 4 brothers being punched or, sometimes sneaking in a cheap shot to the younger ones.
Oh, there you go. We had Aaron on the podcast.
Okay.
Talking 47G.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell a little bit about what your brothers are doing and almost how it complements kind of what you're doing too?
Yeah, it's a really unique kind of intersection. So my older brother, Steve, is the CEO of the Larry H. Miller Corporation.
Yeah.
Previously owners of the Jazz, sold that, currently own a number of different assets, including the Daybreak community, Destination Homes, Real Salt Lake, and a plethora of other companies. And so they're kind of a family office that's strategically investing into key verticals. And so to see Steve and to see the good things that the Larry H. Miller Company does, it's just been really inspiring.
Yeah.
And then I have a younger brother, Aaron, who leads a group called 47G. It's the Aerospace and Defense Association, and they represent that segment of the economy. And so they can really pour fuel on the fire to light up that sector in a big way.
And they're bringing generals to come speak. They're bringing in Boeings, the Northrop
Absolutely.
Grumman. They're just bringing these powerhouses to Utah to really say, we are an aerospace and defense hub in Utah. We are one that's been overlooked for decades.
Right.
Yeah.
And it represents 20% of the economy. I mean, it's this hard tech that's really sticky, that's moving the needle. And so I think we can leverage, meaning EDCUtah can leverage the expertise of 47G.
Yeah.
We can partner with the Larry H. Miller Company on different projects, support their initiatives. One of their big projects, it's called the Power District. It's the west side of Salt Lake near Rocky Mountain Power's headquarters. They're in the process of transforming that into this walkable, livable, really nice mixed-use community. And so I just always pinch myself when I get involved with projects, whether it's with my brothers or anybody else, a lot of our partners, investors, just to see the cool things happening around the state, in rural Utah, in urban Utah. It's a great time to live in the Beehive State.
Yeah, I'm sure you pinch yourself every time you and I get an opportunity to sit down.
Many times, yes.
I'm just teasing. It's mutual. Yeah, it's mutual. Okay, well then, kind of round out the episode of this podcast, let's talk about your the structure. We've talked about EDCU, but I want to talk about like the dynamic of your team. And not necessarily having to name all of your staff or anything, but what's kind of the dynamic of the different roles that your staff plays, those departments, and how can site selectors utilize them as liaisons to help their select their projects, make the connections and the relationships they need, and help create project wins?
Well, I'm a big college football fan, and I love when a coach says, our defense swarms the ball. So when a running back has the ball and he's trying to move upfield, the defense works together, they swarm, they tackle him. And I like to think that our team swarms really well, but not to block the running back, but to empower a project. And so if a site selector were to contact one of our team members, our team tends to swarm, tends to wrap their arms around that person and say, what can we help with? It's probably the most selfless, humble, hardworking team I've ever been across or been a part of across the board. Like, they don't want credit. They're humble, they're hardworking. It's just really cool to see. For them, a win is helping the project, even if they're never mentioned in the news story.
Yeah.
We have different divisions within the office. And so we have, of course, our business development team. Erin Farr is our vice president. She's also our new deputy director, has been with the organization many years and is just a great asset, level-headed, smart, understands it really well. Her team, they're kind of the liaison to these different project leads. And so they're always on the phone. They're always answering emails or hosting site selectors or project leads. And so that's their role. They work closely with the governor's office and, leveraging the strength of the partnership. We have a research team. And when I say research, we have a lot of investment into different software that will help a site selector understand any and everything about Utah.
Yeah. Do all the data crunching.
Population, demographics, economic analysis. As a community joins EDCUtah, they automatically get a community profile through our research team, just like a 4-page document that says, here's kind of the high-level overview of your economic development. And then we have an investor relations team that works hard to service our members, to provide meaningful opportunities to connect. And that's the other part of economic development that's a lot of fun, is if we can have some type of gathering with 75 people who are top-notch business leaders, and they're interacting, and then we bring in our public leaders, and we're creating this space for them to, explore deals and explore opportunities for training or investment. It's just really powerful. And then we have a marketing and events team. And so they help out with branding the state. They reach out to the site selectors. We do regular email communications with the site selectors, highlighting projects, highlighting opportunities. The Inland Port, for example, looking at Iron County, BZI, like that's something we would feed up to the site selectors. Like, we have BZI, we have this project area. Why don't you think about bringing companies here?
Yeah. One shout out that I will give to your team, and I would love actually to give a shout out to all of your team members, because that swarming analogy is perfect. Anytime I have a project that's interested here, I feel that with your team. And to be honest, several years ago, I didn't feel that way. In fact, I was often frustrated in trying to work with EDCUtah and the state and everything like that. I just felt very secondary importance. And again, that's not to, I think that was just an older culture, and the culture is so different, and I love it. And one person that has made all the difference for me with EDCU is Greg Bisping.
Yeah.
His role reaching out to the individual communities has just been so vitally important to help us know that, hey, you're important to us here. You need anything, you give us a holler. And if anybody listening hasn't felt that way, call Greg, chat with Greg, and he'll help you get connected. He's not going to solve your problems, but he'll help connect you from the public sector side of things, or even the private sector. But yeah, I just shout out Greg. I'm doing a heart if you're going to watch the video. Anyways, So the last thing I want to end with is, and I'm going to be selfish in this question. Tell me how you see Southern Utah developing and the strengths that Southern Utah brings as we are working to really put our flag in the ground to say we are the bookend. We are the second major Western market in Utah. Tell me your vision for that and how you see that coming to fruition.
Yeah. I mentioned this on a panel earlier today at the summit that you and I participated in, and I would just kind of reemphasize, I think this is a marathon and maybe even a half marathon. And this isn't a 40-yard dash. So I don't think Southern Utah, by just doing some one cool thing, is going to transform.
Yeah.
I think consistency, good planning, good messaging is going to make all of the difference. And if we can have that kind of long-term view, what happens in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be truly remarkable because all of the elements are there. Infrastructure, workforce, quality of life, desirable communities who want investment, thoughtful leaders like you. And so keeping that momentum, I think, is going to lead to just steady growth. And one day we're going to wake up and say, wow, like, look at everything that's happened. And a lot's already happened. But if we just suddenly want to, fix all of our problems overnight, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
Play the long game, be consistent, be reliable as we work with site selectors, constantly feed them success stories of what's happening in this area. I think that's one of the most important things. But then intentionality as well.
Right.
The planning, the programs, the coordination amongst the locals, leveraging the state and the different partners. As I look forward to Southern Utah, everybody loves Southern Utah. Everybody says it's like the most amazing place. As I look forward, we're going to see even more of that. Just more global recognition, more direct flights, more infrastructure, stronger programs, and it's just blossoming into this really wonderful place. And I really do love it down here. I'm encouraged by what's ahead. So
yeah. Well, thank you. You're right. It takes time. And as a marathon runner myself,
yes,
I loved that analogy because, and I'll say this real quick as we wrap up, and then let you kind of have the last few words. But as a marathon runner, I can run a marathon. Well, I don't want to brag too much, but there's a pace that I can run a marathon at.
Yeah. And it's really fast. I know this.
It's decently fast. But it can take, on the short end, like very short end, 3 months to build up to that pace.
Yes.
But it generally takes 6 months to get there for a full marathon. And I can tell you, I qualified for the Boston Marathon. I ran my fastest marathon in my 40s, and it took me 6 months to get there. And then after I qualified, I just work, life, 9 to 12 weeks of just inconsistent running. And the last few weeks, now starting to do my build for Boston, I am, this morning, I ran a pace that I want to run the Boston Marathon at. I only did 2 miles separately. I put an easy mile in between. I had to take breaks during both those miles because I'm at the beginning of my training block. And if I were to go and run that marathon right now at those paces, I would be dead by like the 10K mark. But bringing it back to what you're saying, consistency over time, building up the endurance, building up the strength. And really, when I marathon train, I have a rigid plan that I follow, that I build in flexibility and contingencies, but I have a pathway and a strategy to get there. And what you said just resonated so strong with me because that's exactly right. We're going to have to be patient and plan right. And if we plan right, we can keep the integrity of what we love about Southern Utah.
That's right.
And bring all the things that we feel like we want and need here.
Yeah.
So to end, any parting thoughts as we close here, my friend?
Yeah, it's 2026. We have the Olympics coming up in 2034. We have a lot of good days ahead. I just love Utah. I love the northern part where I grew up. I love the southern part where I spend a lot of time.
Let's make it more.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm just really encouraged by the opportunities that we have, by the partnerships. Really appreciate you having me on the podcast today. It means a lot. We're big fans of Iron County and big fans of David Johnson. So
you're too nice.
Grateful to be here.
Yeah. Well, Ryan Starks, the executive director and president of EDC Utah, thank you so much for taking your time to be here.
Thank you.